energy, immunity, clarity, and sleep. It's all about Thrival of the Wisest. Well, how does one become wise regarding these topics, especially in the light of the internet age? One could just kind of search this and do their own research. We're here today having a conversation with Sherry Strong, who's an upcoming guest, teacher, expert, going to be here Sunday, March 5th, an afternoon, a deep dive of learning to explore these topics and more. And if you caught our previous video, it was more of an introduction to Sherry, who she is, the amazing work that she's doing in the world. And today we wanted to go a little bit deeper into some of the topics that are near and dear to her heart, that she has expertise and deep domain knowledge about. And we'll talk a little bit about the workshop coming up. And in specific, these topics of energy, immunity, clarity, sleep, these things are kind of foundational, critical. And welcome, Sherry. Thanks for hopping on a call with me.
My pleasure, Malcolm. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, right on. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you soon. This is coming up. This is going to be next weekend, Sunday, that you'll be in Calgary. We've already got a number of folks registered. And yeah, just wanted to kind of get into the topics that you'll be speaking about, give some folks some insight into what you'll be sharing and the power, the depth of, getting these aspects of one's life right. And, what we can't learn from just a simple Google search. I know it's wonderful, it's powerful to have that, but it's not the all-knowing, and as we know, a lot of the information out there can be filtered, it can be censored, it can be our access to it altered. So nothing better than gathering in person with like minds and learning together. So
yeah, well, thank you, Malcolm. I think one of the things that I learned very early on is more information doesn't lead to clarity. More information leads to confusion, particularly if that information is curated, right? Because as you know, with Google, that information, it depends on, number one, sponsors. So people who have the money get the higher ranking, and the money to hire people get them higher ranking. And number two, the information that they want you to have is there. There's a great internet marketing joke that says, how do you find something so no one ever sees it again? And you put it on page 2 of Google, right? So it's like, guess how many of us go beyond, page 2 or beyond that. So one of the things with the workshop and what I started teaching people was a philosophical approach to food. And it kind of sounds like, it's in the air kind of thing, but there is a philosophical way that the healthiest cultures on the planet have approached their food that works for them. And it's different. What they eat is different depending on where they live in the world. So it's not that we have to eat certain things. So understanding that, but also what are all the forces that are making us sick and weak? There's so many things that are even marketed as healthy that are actually, making us sick and weak. And then how we're set up for addiction, so we're an addictive species, but we're now living in a world where you can actually get hard drugs in vending machines in British Columbia, but raw milk is illegal, right? So we're really in this upside down world, and it's hard to know what we're meant to eat. And so I have a concept of philosophy I teach called the lethal recipe. And it's really, let's focus on just the 7 foods you must replace. Let's start getting rid of the things that are making us weak, and let's start bringing in the things that make us strong. And I think one of the biggest things that's confusing for people is they make the assumption that the whole process has to be really expensive. And if you just had a diet of superfoods, that would be expensive, but you don't. You have a foundation of foods that are, easily obtained in nature, even here in Alberta. And then you add in other things, either for strengthening purposes or preventative or healing purposes or medicinal purposes. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about ending nutritional confusion, because I've actually taught at a university where there was another course being taught that was ending nutritional confusion. And I looked at the syllabus and I'm like, that is so flipping confusing. You need a degree to figure out how to end nutritional confusion after that, right? And rather than going complex and overwhelming people with information, the philosophy I teach is really helping you understand. So you're not asking a nutritionist, what do I need to eat? What don't I need to eat? If you get the philosophies, and I will be offering an ebook that actually explains those philosophies as part of the course. I sell it online for 27 US dollars. So that will be included for every participant who comes to the course on the day.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I love what you shared there. And to kind of see through a lot of the marketing, a lot of the, it's so funny, misinformation, around food and nutrition, you need to be in the space for a while, right? Because you
Yeah.
just enter into it and you start paying attention, you start following things, like it takes a while to sort through that. And I love that, this idea of this philosophy to kind of like cut through that, really simplify it. I'm 100% with you. You do not need to be a nutritionist to know how to feed yourself, right? Underlying it's actually very simple, but doesn't mean it's easy in this day and age
No.
to get to that point. And I love your approach too. It's like just as much as the good things we can add in will bring us benefit, equally, avoiding cutting out those things that are kind of the major contributors. And surprise, surprise, a lot of those things on that list, I don't know specifically that list that you have, but I bet you those are the things that are being promoted and touted out there right now by industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the idea of Thrival, the Wisest, that we can kind of like write our thinking around food and nutrition. I know that I'm in a space now, and I know you are too. It's like, thank God, like figured it out. Like, I don't need to stress about that nutrition piece. And
Yeah.
when you do, it's like you're totally liberated, and you can just kind of move forward in life with a great sense of confidence, not to mention, health. Ultimately, took me quite a while to get there. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing to fast track that for people, get them on the right tracks. They don't have to spend, like you and I did, years of like, oh, but what about over here? And what about over here? And what about this? What about that? And, there's so many kind of diet gurus out there. And you know what? You and I, we've been around them. And
Yes.
your observations were probably the same as mine. It's like, well, wait a minute. You say you're doing this, but then on the other hand, you're doing that. And, one guy's like scarfing supplements, another one's eating pizza, behind everybody's back. And, it gets so funny. It gets so funny, that food world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really brings up a lot of our emotional stuff, and there is a big emotional, mental, psychological component to food, on that idea of you don't have to be a nutritionist to feed yourself. I was speaking at a conference in Tasmania almost 20 years ago now, and this guy, after I got down from the stage, he said, "Oh, my ex-girlfriend, both of her parents were dietitians." And I said, "Oh, did she have an eating disorder?" And he's like shocked, and he said, "Whoa, that's a really bold question to ask." Cheeky, I think he said. And I said, "Well, did she?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, she did."
Right.
So,
Wow.
and you know that if you don't find your sanity through it, and you don't find a really grounded, common sense way to approach your food, you've seen lots of people with eating disorders or disordered eating around that fear about I shouldn't eat this and I shouldn't eat that. And I think that's one of the things that the philosophical approach gave me, was it got rid of my fear around, massive fear around food. I had knowledge and how to avoid it, but my massive fear was distilled. And the other thing, I am, I wasn't self-conscious, as self-conscious about my food choices. I came to this place, I call myself a highly flawed expert, where I give myself, leave pass. I don't project any kind of perfect eating. So I will eat a piece of pizza, but it's never from a place that uses a premix and terrible ingredients. It's homemade and it's really good quality, ingredients. And I understand that's not a normal food for me. That if I had to source that food in nature, I'd never have pizza. So it's tempering that, and finding a peaceful way of actually developing a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm glad you brought up that point. I use that example of, the expert like eating pizza behind people's back, not
Yeah.
because pizza's bad, but
Yeah.
because, what they were touting, publicly was the opposite, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing, Malcolm, that I found in my seminars when I was running them. If I got up on the pulpit, right, and was too puritanical about my food views, the next few days I would be eating way out of sync. I would be craving the bad stuff more. And it was almost like it was normalizing, it was equalizing me. It's like, unless you're completely congruent in what you're teaching, you know, it was just too puritanical, and it
Right.
was a bizarre kind of mental thing. But so that's why I really try and get people to the point of being really human, realistic. It's not about, well, I'm human, I'm an addictive species, so I can eat whatever I want, but we're always in this process of striving. And I think there's something about coming together in a live event where we're just discussing these things that is never as well replicated online. That when we're together, there's an energy exchange that happens that it seems to resonate within us on a deeper level.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, so far, and as you mentioned, kind of online, we will have that as an option. Actually, no, we're not. No, we are. This
Oh,
is a purely in-person event only. I forgot that. I was like, wait a minute, we are offering it up, and we normally do, but yeah, I remember you and I had this conversation. So this is literally just an in-person event. So yeah, stoked for that, and knowing a few people in the room, and having met a couple the last couple days, people coming in to register, and some of them are specifically there because they know who you are and they want to be in the room with you. So it's going to be great.
thank you. And just to give people a bit of feedback, I always ask for people, at the end of the workshop, just one sentence or whatever about what you got out of it. And the last one, someone said, Sherry's very informative, good sense of humor. That's the best compliment you can give me. And gifted in her calling. Amanda said, love the workshop, definitely eye opening. There's so much. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Um, Sherry, funny, serious, passionate, so informative, love it. And talk about food for the soul. My heart felt full, my eyes filled with tears a couple of times, and I learned. Grow it always, grow always. That's what feeds us. Thank you. So those are real, kind of testimonies. The workshop is not just designed to fill your head; it's designed to fill your heart. And what I found is that if we're just eating from here, we're not eating from here and our gut. We make less wise choices. So this is really about moving forward as food becomes more scarce, as it becomes trickier to kind of avoid the things that are actually making our bodies toxic. We have to really move into that place of wisdom.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, you brought up a really kind of poignant point. I was just listening to my good friend Rob Avis. He was talking about that connection between energy and food, and he's very much following kind of the energy curve of peak energy, whether that's kind of an intentional decline, also a natural decline, and as energy becomes more scarce, conversely, we are going to find food more scarce. And
Yeah.
that's not meant to put anybody into fear. It's just kind of
No.
like looking at a matter of fact and how can we begin to, make choices with that type of awareness and prepare ourselves for the future. And this is, why I think you chose that phrase, thrival of the wisest. It's not just about survival. Some people
Yeah.
may end up in that mode, but those of us that kind of have that awareness, do that pre-planning ahead, it really will be about how do we thrive. And I absolutely 100% believe that we can move into the future without fear and thriving and really be pillars in our community
That's how
of
I see
health.
you. That's how I see you, Malcolm.
Oh,
Really.
thank you.
I
Yeah,
definitely have no fears about you and your family going forward. You've built up such goodwill in your community. There's no one has a bad word to say about Malcolm,
oh,
um, and I'm not just blowing smoke up the proverbial. Um, you know, you're someone, when I look at your energy, I aspire to, to have those qualities and traits. And um, yeah, so let's move beyond survival. There's an interesting thing. The potato farmers, the potato famine in Ireland, a lot of people died because of the psychology of the famine, when there was actually food around that could have actually kept them alive.
right.
As someone who does foraging in forests and things like that, there was food that could have kept them alive and they didn't have to starve. But the psychology of food shortages and what that can do to people can cause people to behave out of fear instead of, knowledge and wisdom. And so you don't just have a business full of things that can nourish people. You have a knowledge of how you can actually go out into the environment we already have and nourish yourselves. And that's, going forward, we're going to need that wisdom.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful comment. And for those that don't know, the Irish potato famine, as it was called, it lasted about 7 years, and 25%, so 2 million people of the Irish population either died or left the country as a result. You imagine 1 in 4, right, were affected. And there's a very real potential that we're moving into, I'm not going to put any timelines on it, but, a similar kind of phase. So 1 in 4, be the 1 in 4 that's the opposite, that kind of holds strong, that holds that wisdom, that continues to nourish oneself and be healthy in spite of it all. So
Yeah. Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, any kind of last things that you want to share about this workshop coming up? Just a reminder, again, it's going to be Sunday, March 5th. It's 1 till 5. So it's a 4-hour deep dive. We'll have some breaks. There'll be times to kind of like before, during, after to connect. I know it's going to be a very powerful event, like you say, to kind of fill our brains, but also to fill our hearts and nourish us on all the deep levels.
That's exactly it. And I say to people, take 4 hours out of your life to learn what it took me 30 years to learn. And, from all the different bumps. And as you said, I'm quite certain, collectively we spent what you could buy a house with on learning. So it's a very small investment to take your time and that amount of money to learn what it took us many, many decades to learn. And for the first 20 people who register, I'm actually giving you a zoodle maker. This is a vegetable slicer. It looks really kind of ordinary, but I promise you it makes the best zucchini noodles in the world, and it grates anything. So first 20 people that register, I'm giving you a zoodle maker, and everyone gets the Sweet Freedom 21-Day Challenge ebook with the philosophies and there's about 50 recipes in there as well.
Cool. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Appreciate that generosity. And if you would like to take share on that offer, go to lightseller.ca, the live classes and events. You'll see it kind of right at the top. Sherry's class coming up this March 5th. It's a Sunday, 1 till 5. And yeah, looking forward to it. So thanks for the quick chat here, Sherry. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Give it a thumbs up, give it a like, share it with somebody that you know should be there. And we'd love to see you this coming up Sunday. All right. Bye for now.